All right, so get this, exploding pagers.
Exploding pagers.
Yeah, you heard that right.
Wow.
Not like the ones you see in, Stranger Things or whatever.
Right, right.
We're talking real deal, rigged to detonate devices in, of all places, Lebanon.
Okay, now that's a story that could only come from, well,
It sounds like something out of a Tom Clancy novel, right?
exactly.
Except this is real life, and the implications are pretty unsettling.
Absolutely. I mean, when I first heard about this, I was like, pagers? Seriously. It's like stepping back into the 90s, but with, a deadly twist.
Yeah, it's a wild one for sure.
So how did we even get here?
Well, that's what we're going to unpack today, right?
Let's hear it.
We've got sources talking about Hezbollah's tactics, the technology involved, and the wider consequences of this whole thing. And trust me, it's a lot to unpack.
The first thing that struck me was just how this whole thing seems so low-tech, so, I don't know, almost archaic in this age of cyber warfare and all.
Yeah, you'd think we'd be past the point of pagers blowing up.
Right. But then when you dig a little deeper, you start to see the strategy, the thinking behind it.
Okay, so let's start there. Then Hezbollah, they're not exactly known for using outdated tech, right?
Anything but. They've got their fingers in some pretty sophisticated operations, let me tell you.
So why the sudden reliance on pagers?
Well, you see, Hezbollah, they're convinced, maybe rightfully so, that Israel has a, shall we say, significant advantage when it comes to monitoring communications.
Right, surveillance and all that.
Exactly. And cell phones. They're basically tracking devices these days. But pagers, they're analog, limited range, much harder to intercept.
So they went old school to evade the very 21st century problem of, total surveillance.
In a nutshell, yeah.
Wild. And this actually worked for them. They were able to operate undetected.
For a while, it seems so. But, of course, that's only part of the story, isn't it? Well,
Because then things took a turn, right?
and a dark one at that.
Let's talk about what happened when these pagers actually started going off.
Picture this, right? It's 2024, Beirut. People going about their day, totally normal. When suddenly, all across the city, these seemingly harmless pagers, they start peeping.
A sound most people probably hadn't heard in years.
Exactly. An almost forgotten relic of a bygone era. And then, boom, explosions,
Yeah.
chaos, people injured, some fatally.
Our source mentioned one case, a 9-year-old girl, Fatima Abdullah.
Heartbreaking. She was just holding her father's pager when it detonated. It really underscores the indiscriminate nature of this whole thing.
Yeah, this wasn't a targeted strike on a military base or anything.
No, this was an attack on a communication network. And in doing so, they terrorized an entire population.
The psychological impact must have been immense. Suddenly, even the most mundane technologies become potential threats.
Precisely. You see a pager on the street, you don't think, oh, that's quaint. You think, is that going to explode?
Right. It completely erodes any sense of normalcy, any trust in the technology we rely on.
It's a chilling thought.
So we've talked about Hezbollah's side of it, their reasons for using pagers. But what about the other side of this whole thing?
You mean?
Who's behind these attacks?
Right, right.
It's got to be more complicated than just some guy in his basement with a soldering iron.
Oh, absolutely.
So who are we talking about?
Well, all signs point to Israel.
Really?
Yeah, and it might seem counterintuitive at first.
Yeah, Israel, they're like the tech giants.
Exactly. You wouldn't think they'd be messing around with, ancient technology like pagers.
Right, right.
But here's the thing. Israel, they've got this long history of using whatever tools are most effective, no matter how unconventional.
So it's not about the tech itself, it's about how you use it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And they knew Hezbollah was shifting towards pagers, saw that vulnerability.
So they exploited it.
Oh, absolutely. And they went all out on this one.
Okay, how so?
They didn't just hack into existing pagers. They built a whole operation from scratch.
What?
Yeah. A fake company called BAC Consulting, posing as this international pager manufacturer.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. Complete with a backstory, a network of, seemingly legitimate operations.
Wow, that's some Jason Bourne level stuff.
Right. It's all about plausible deniability.
So if anyone found out, they could just be like, BAC Consulting. Don't know them.
Exactly. Nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
They were playing the long game, manufacturing these rigged pagers for over 2 years, just waiting for the right moment.
And I'm guessing that moment came when they knew Hezbollah was completely reliant on them.
Bingo. It's a pretty audacious move when you think about it, but it's also classic Israeli military doctrine.
High risk, high reward.
Something like that. But of course, it also raises a whole host of ethical questions.
Yeah, for sure, but we'll get into that a bit later. I mean, it's straight out of a spy thriller, right? This whole fake company, the rigged
Just
devices.
wild.
But it worked, didn't it? At least in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, they sowed chaos, disrupted Hezbollah's operations.
And they did it all under this cloak of plausible deniability.
Exactly. Maintaining that strategic ambiguity is crucial for them.
But was it worth it? I mean, we've talked about the human cost, the innocent lives lost.
Right, and that's something that can't be ignored. The ethical implications are huge.
Absolutely. But beyond that, were there any other, I don't know, unintended consequences? Like, did this whole thing backfire in some way?
That's always the risk, isn't it? With these kinds of operations, you can never fully predict the fallout.
So what are you thinking?
Well, it's possible, even likely, that this whole thing pushed Hezbollah even further down the rabbit hole of, let's say, unconventional communication.
Yeah.
Meaning, if they were already spooked about surveillance, about Israel having their number, so to speak.
Right, they switched to pagers.
Exactly. This incident might have just confirmed their worst fears.
So what now? They ditched technology altogether. Go back to, like, smoke signals.
Hey, stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's entirely possible they doubled down on even more low-tech, harder-to-trace methods.
So, like, what? Carrier pigeons? Dead drops? The Cold War called? They want their spycraft back?
Well, think about it. Those methods, they're practically invisible to modern surveillance tech. No signals to intercept, no digital footprint to trace.
Kind of brilliant when you think about it, but also terrifying.
Exactly. It really makes you question what security even means in this day and age.
Right, because the more we try to stay ahead of the game, the further back we seem to go.
It's a strange paradox, isn't it? This constant push and pull between technological advancement and, well, the unintended consequences that come with it.
And in a world where technology is so intertwined with, well, everything, the stakes are only getting higher.
Absolutely. This whole pager incident, it's a stark reminder that even the most mundane tech can be weaponized, can be turned against us.
It's definitely given us a lot to think about, that's for sure.
It certainly have.
And to our listeners, if you found this deep dive as unsettling as we did, well, you're not alone.
It's a lot to process.
It is, but that's the world we live in, right? Technology is a double-edged sword, and sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction.
Truer words have never been spoken.
All right, folks, that's it for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and maybe, just maybe, keep an eye on those old pagers.
You never know.